Missed an episode of your favorite podcast? Choose from over a decade of content in our archives, not just the latest episode. All free at gcnlive.com.
This is your call to action. Get prepared, America. Economy, survival, energy, disasters. This is USAPrepares.com. Informative radio, educational radio. Interact now by emailing instructor@USAPrepares.com or text at 434-390-7953. Class, please take your seats. Now, your instructor, Vincent Finelli.
Everyone all set, cocked, locked. Here we go. Your dial set correctly to USA Prepares. Thank you for being in class with us today. We're delighted you're with us. We broadcast 2 hours, Monday through Friday, 9 a.m. through 11 a.m. Central Time, right here from the farm in Missouri. Nathan is engineering the broadcast in Minnesota. Thank you so much for your excellent work, Nathan. I really appreciate it. And with us this morning, Dr. Richard Allen Miller. Doc Ram. Welcome, Doc Ram.
Good morning. I'm going to need serious extra volume, please.
Okay.
Especially loading day, and I'm having very difficult time. I couldn't hear the news.
Okay. All right. How's that? Is that better?
A little better, thank you. You can even pump it up a bit more if you need to.
Okay. The dial goes
to my end so you don't pick up.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, the dial goes to 10. We've got it set at 14.
Thank you. Well, there's a reason for the need for this. There's something going on with our son. I just got a very nice email from Ed Marvini. My best wishes back to him for helping me during that period. And the grand minimum is about to happen with our son, and it's going to affect all of our cash flow. That has to do with Uranus. Uranus is an astrological planet that seemingly affects our lives. I did studies when I was in the military on it. It's an unusual form of physics called cosmobiology, and it has validation. I mean, I valid up to 3 sigma, 99.9975% probable event. So there's something going on with that. And then this morning, I got another email from someone else. By the way, thank you, Ed. That someone else sent me regarding our trees, just like I've been talking about. Now, this person's in Colorado, and I posted that on Facebook. Something is happening to our timber. It's everywhere. And at least in the western states, and it's not the bark beetle. And we don't know what it is. At one point I speculated that it was Fukushima and or the chemtrails. I'm certain all of this plays a part in it, but our sun is changing. And with it, it is affecting our forests, and you can see the kill in every tree. It's scary for me that grew up in forests, and they're different right now. And I don't know what it means.
I've got a comment about that, Rick. For those who don't know, I live with our family. We have a traditional 1950s style family. Our boys live here, spend a lot of time with us on the farm. I mean, farming is 24/7, 365. There's no question about it. And when we first built this farmhouse in 2005, we thought, we've got 120 acres roughly of trees, and we don't want to cut any trees down for, if we decide to heat with wood, which, a couple of years after we built the farmhouse, we decided, we're going to heat with wood. And we would just go into the woods, and there'd be dead limbs that would fall down, and we would just hook them up to the tractor and pull them out of the woods and cut them up, and then build a stack of them and burn them in the outdoor wood furnace to heat our hot water and to heat our home in the wintertime. Well, I was thinking 120 acres, I don't know, maybe that's just about enough for limbs to fall off trees and for us to pick them up and, we'll be cleaning up the woods, and we're not going to be cutting trees down to heat the house, and it'll probably be just about enough. And it was. Now we have a different problem. Now there are so many trees dying and falling over, and we're talking 13 years later. There are so many trees dying and falling over that our tractor is not big enough. And we have, multiple tractors. And when I say tractor, I'm talking about a 100 horsepower tractor. We're talking about a 12,000 pound tractor. Not big enough to pick up with the front end loader some of these trees that have fallen over. We need a backhoe, and we have a backhoe, and we had to buy a backhoe for these kinds of reasons. Because of the washout of the road, we have to fix the road because the county can't always do it. We have to fix our driveway that washes out all the time. We have to fix, the stream will wash out the culverts and, the bridge that we built on our farm to get from one field to another, that kind of thing, to let the cows get across the streams. Well, we have a backhoe, and we need to use the backhoe now because the trees are so large that they're just falling over. And now we have more wood than we need. And that didn't used to be and talking about firewood, that didn't used to be the case, but it is now. So what you're talking about is for real. Excuse me?
I have a question. If it's a 100 horsepower tractor, does that mean it does work of 100 horses? Because that's not true. I have logged with horses. I use Sheffields, small draft. And I can tell you, where do they get that rating?
Well, I know that 1 horsepower is equivalent to 746 watts of electricity. I mean, that's what I've been taught for, since I've first learned about this.
So you're equating it to electricity, not animals like it's named after.
Oh, I'll tell you what, if you take 100 horses, I'll bet you that could outpull a 100 horsepower tractor.
I understand that. That's why I was asking where that rating came from and what it actually literally means, because it's not the same.
No, you're absolutely right. It's not the same. It doesn't have the same traction as 400 hooves. You take 100 horses and 400 hooves. And, no, there's no way. However, that's the nomenclature used by the industry. So
the food that they eat, the gas compared to the grass. And
that was something I want. That's something I wanted to talk to you about. I want to talk to you about what I consider something that is pretty idiotic. And that is, we have converted corn to alcohol to dilute gasoline to cause engine problems and fuel system problems that's causing us to junk vehicles that should not be junked because we've destroyed them by using the ethanol in the fuel that the oil companies have decided that, this is what they're going to sell. And I was thinking this morning, I think we're going to go down with a whimper. It's not going to be a big bang. I don't think it's going to be a big war. I think it's going to be a whimper. We're going to have done this to ourselves through the greed of just a few miserable, disgusting, evil, egocentric people. Who would have ever thought? I mean, what kind of a mind does it take to say, you know what? There are people starving all over the world, but let's take some corn and let's turn it into gasohol. Who would have thought of that? Because gasoline has more BTUs per gallon than alcohol does. And if you get over 10% content of alcohol mixed with gasoline, you destroy the fuel system. But we're already destroying the fuel system. I was thinking this morning.
The petrodollar is dead, as far as I'm concerned. And basically, Ford Motor Company started with alcohol, not gasoline. And we did just fine because gas does not burn clean where alcohol does.
Yes, that's correct.
I can make alcohol with, biomass. I can do that simply. Mm-hmm. In fact, I have a friend that's doing that right now next to a field of strawberries. And, the strawberry leaf is converted into alcohol. Mm-hmm. I'm confused about a lot of things, and I thought I understood everything, and I don't.
I saw 2 days ago, something that just infuriated me. I was traveling in the truck with the family, and we're heading towards Springfield from the farm, Springfield, Missouri. and there was this cloud of dust coming toward us. And it was a truck racing opposite direction. So we were going west. It was coming east on this back paved road. And it was flying, and it was heaped over with fertilizer. So this is like a dump truck style truck, heaped over with fertilizer over the height of the walls of the bed of this dump truck, if you will. And fertilizer was just flying out all over the road. The guy rounded the curve, at the intersection, and I can see the residue of this trail of fertilizer this guy has left. It infuriated me for many reasons. One reason is the guy who bought what he thought maybe was 18 tons of fertilizer is probably going to get 16, by the time it's delivered. The other thing is this guy has polluted the streams with a massive amount of fertilizer, which is instant runoff with the next rain. These kinds of things are causing problems, and I guess this is the high cost of low education, wouldn't you say? Isn't that what this is?
I'm not even going to try to comment on that one. I know better. Yeah, I'm lost on so many things today. I don't understand any of it anymore. And why? Fertilizer is, there's liming. I understand the need for mineral and liming. I understand what fertilizer means to some people, but, you're talking about salts usually. When you talk about fertilizer, you're talking about different magnesium salts, different kinds of salts, and what they do to the soil. But biomass is different, and I don't know.
I've got a comment. Of all the farms that I see around us in our neck of the woods near in Missouri, we are probably the only one that is not using commercial fertilizer. Now, outlying from here where they have chicken farms where they raise chickens for meat and eggs, like these Tyson chicken factories, like in Arkansas. Well, they've got more chicken poop than they know what to do with, and the farmers around fertilize their fields with that. But we have found that if we just feed the cows hay, we can get by without fertilizing, without commercial fertilizer. We'd have better grass if we put a lot of fertilizer down, but we're managing. Doc Ram is with us, Dr. Richard Allen Miller. Yeah.
And to add to this conversation we were talking about might be relevant. You said that you fed your cattle hay. I did a study with Nakamura of Honda out of Osaka, Japan, and I created a way to dehydrate comfrey, which essentially was impossible. I was working at the time with German money. I was being hired by Henry Barth himself to determine on alternative crops that led to my alternative agriculture thing. And I made a discovery that in Osaka, their feedlots are 60-story buildings where the cattle never see the light of day. They're walked around in circles in each floor and fed alfalfa from H.R. Miller, other exporters out of the Grand Coulee Dam area in Washington State. It's a big business, alfalfa. And it turns out that when you dehydrate alfalfa, you can have as much as 22% protein. Most alfalfa is running somewhere around 8 to 12%. You can tell by the color of the leaf and all of that in your bale what your protein levels are just visually. Very rarely will you ever see anything up to 18%. And when you do dehydration, special cubing or pelletizing, you can get as high as 22% protein. Now, when I did my study with comfrey, what I discovered, the cattle, by the way, in these feedlots were rampant with disease. And when I say that, I mean every cow had a problem because sunlight and vitamin D and all of that kind of thing, being out in nature, is much more important than we realize to the animal. And being in feedlots, it's like doing feedlots with salmon. You have to feed them massive quantities of antibiotics and other things to keep diseases from spreading. And so I did a study on how to dehydrate, approximately 100,000 pounds of glop per acre. Comfrey, if you're doing alfalfa and you get 3 cuts per season, if you're doing a 3-cut season or a 6-cut season, that depends on irrigation, Comfrey will start right out at 6 cuts and go up to 10 cuts in one season. And the yields on Comfrey are much more. Everybody knows what Comfrey is. It's a great big long plant. It has mucilage in it, which will cause the green cut to rot if you're not careful. And so we discovered that when you do a 60% Comfrey, 40% alfalfa pellet, it virtually eliminated all diseases because Comfrey has a 28% protein yield, and it contained 2 of the missing essential amino acids that are missing in alfalfa, lysine and allantoin. And when you put those 2 combinations together, now you had a perfect cattle feed for any kind of situation for the cow. And we approached, there's a couple of larger distributors through the world. They have plants. Alltech is out of your area. They in Mexico and other places, and they provide all your cattle feeds. You know, if you're doing eggs, chickens, they'll have your the yellowing agent, which is I forget what it is now. Never mind. I forget what it is. It's an ingredient that's necessary for chickens to make their yolks yellow. And I started marketing this thing, and the yields on this, if you were to take a small part of your field and put Comfrey in it, and then intersperse it with grass hay, so that the cattle could eat it. The problem is Comfrey will not be eaten fresh by the cow because the underside of the leaf has the little prickles on it, and it's hard on the tongue of the cow. And so we won't eat fresh Comfrey. But you can put a wilt on it and mix it, and that cow will eat that, and you'll have a much higher yield in your protein.
I've got some thoughts I'd like to discuss with you when we come back on the other side of this break about Comfrey and something that we were going to try, and I'll share that with our class when we come back. We're cattle farmers. Doc Ram's with us, and we're talking about Comfrey. So, Rick, we're picking up we're buying a brand new baler, hay baler. Well, not exactly brand new, but brand new to us. This particular baler was was made in 1958.
So it's doing what? 90-pound bales? 120
between 40 to, let's say, 120, yes, square bales.
Okay, yeah,
it's an antique baler.
The new round balers are 800-pounders, and that's an unusual new direction in big farming and things like that. By the way, it's Xanthophyll from Marigold that colors the egg. My memories are all coming back now. Mm-hmm. I just need to work those circuits to get them firing again in my brain. And once they start firing, then things start tumbling out like crazy. Comfrey is easy to grow. It's almost impossible not to grow it because the taproot goes down 18 feet into what we call B horizon. It turns rock into soil, basically. And if you can grow Comfrey, you can. The easy way it requires air drying. I found a way to pick it up off the field with a wilt using a vacuum throw. And then we used hop kilns, and I have a technical crop report or one of my little PDFs that I'm going to start doing on how to grow comfrey and how to set it up. The problem is getting it started because grasses will try to tend to take over. Once the comfrey has set, the broadleaf will smoke out all the other smaller annuals like grasses and things like that because they can't get light. It's a really wonderful plant to have in your herbal pharmacy. The allantoin can be put on wounds, on like scar tissue, and will eliminate scars or begin to erase them, much like aloe vera will do that with the lipoids. I think that comfrey is the future for animal feeds. I think that once we've learned how to handle it, you can't dry it in the field. It'll rot. You can't dry it in the shade. It'll rot. You can put a wilt on it and then take it in with, crimping it so that you give it extra places to dry, put a condition on it. And then you can air dry it with big stacks. We used to have portable hop kilns that would go out into the field and dry it right there on the spot. What I tried to do was run it through a pelletizer or a tablet or a cuber, and it'll still rot. It's that much mucilage. It won't dry normal ways. That's why it was never used in farming, because people didn't know how to handle it. I approached it as a physicist and figured out a way to do it, but it's still an awkward thing. But if you feed your cattle a 60% comfrey, 40% alfalfa pellet, you will never need antibiotics or anything else, even in dairy. You won't need to do it. It's not necessary. And that's a study that was done by, okay. I know. It's unbelievable. And that's just simply because it had the complete cycles of essential amino acids for the cow. The cow has a different kind of digestive system than we do, and so it has different kinds of requirements in terms of how it digests with amino acids. And with comfrey and alfalfa, you had a whole food for the cow. Complete balance.
Well, what I was trying to figure out as you were discussing this is how we could plant, let's say, a few acres of comfrey, get it started, and then bale it into...
Man, you'll never take it out. Nuclear weapon might, but I don't know anything else.
Well, what I was thinking is...
Hogs will do it. That's it.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we have the round balers that you've discussed. About 1,000 pounds. It'll roll hay into 1,000 pounds, and then we pick up those 1,000-pound round bales. We don't. There are several types. There's net wrap, which is kind of like think of it like a large weave nylon stocking almost, that goes over the bale of hay and holds it together, but then you have an enormous amount of waste.
You're talking about the ones that you pull a vacuum in them and then they don't have to be dehydrated?
No, I'm actually talking about a field-dried bale that when you go, first you cut the hay, you ted it and you spread it around on the field, you let it dry for a day or two, and then you rake it into a windrow, and then you come by with a round baler that will pick up those windrows of hay and bale them into a cylinder, if you will, typically 4 feet wide.
You're using a side throw delivery rake. I understand. Okay. What you want to do with that, there's another way to do it that I think slicker, and but we can discuss that. We'll do that another time. I just want to say on the comfrey, if you put in a 2-acre field, you will never lose that, and that'll be a great place to do your chickens.
Well, I really like this idea.
I know. It's I've got technical. I've written a book on it, a mini book on it. I've written many books that need now publishing. I'm seeking patrons to get my work out because I'm realizing that what has happened to me, I'm not going to get there fast enough to complete my life's work. And I have 360 PDFs like comfrey on how to grow various crops, like marigolds. There's different kinds of marigolds that you would grow for the chickens. There's Seghetti's variety. That would be the one I'm talking about, not the one that's used as an insecticide or a pesticide. I think that there are some crops that are alternative crops that can be intercropped together. I did one PDF on a 6-grain field that does the same thing as comfrey, where the cow just eating that field gets all of his nutrition by putting 6 different grains together. There's some other things that you can do like that, which is called intercropping. And intercropping is an interesting concept for certain kinds of animal breeding. Horses, for example. You give them a special kind of a field with not just rye, but you might have a vetch and some other things in that, and now that horse is going to have what he needs to eat, without having to be supplements.
You're absolutely right. And that's what we do here. We have probably 6 different varieties of grasses, and we even have legumes. We plant lespedeza, and that's why I'm so interested in this comfrey, because if we can figure out a way of drying it so that it doesn't rot, I would really like to.
Comfrey is a bitch. It's like, if you look at it, it's got that mucilage. That means there's little tiny cells that hold a gel of some form. It's not just water. It's in a gel form, which means it doesn't dehydrate in normal standard sun cure. And you have to put a wilt on it. And once you've got the drying process moving in the right direction, then you have to put it in air. And one of the ways they do it, old ways, is that they'll elevate it up to a top of an elevator and drop it in air with an airflow going upwards in the thing, so that as the product is falling through it, it is dehydrating it with an airstream. What you're trying to do is get rid of the moisture and give it back to the Lord, where it's not held in stasis in the material. And you have to get it down below 12%, or it will compost. And so, heat up. And you can always tell, by the way, the simple way to tell whether or not you're at 10% or 12% moisture is that 10%, the whatever you're looking at, will snap break rather than bend break. That's the distinction. Just working in a field crop, taking your product, and when you bend it, it'll either bend snap or crack snap. Crack snap is at 10%, and 12% is when it bend snaps, and 13% it won't break. And that's how you do it in farming.
Can we build a raised screen? And I'm thinking something that's pretty heavy, almost like chain link fencing. Can we build something like that that's raised, and then distribute the comfrey on that and let it air dry for, let's say we had
like
a week?
A hop kiln. What you do is you have your chain that you put a tarp over it, a breathable tarp, and so that you can roll that tarp off when you pull it out of the off the screen, and use that as an auger. And the thing that you have to do in that regard, though, is the netting. Those are called hop nets because they breathe. They're just open fiber, and it's on the hop floor. And you can put comfrey up to 4 feet deep, and it won't compost if you have the shaft of air going through that. It clips speeds, and those are just big, squirrel cages that'll be running. And you don't need heat as much because it is a vapor pressure concept, and what you're trying to do is move the moisture away, and that's air, not heat. Heat starts the process, but you very rarely, at the end of drying, you need heat for the first hour of 2-day drying. And that's all you need, the first hour or two of heat, and then you turn the heat off because it's expensive, and all you have is air shafts of air going through there, and that will dry it down. What you're trying to do is get the wilt into the next stage of dehydration, which is, the moisture moving from the inner part of the cell outward to the surface of the cell. And that's what heat does, because it accelerates the dehydration or vapor pressure of the chamber. And once you've done that, and the movement of the moisture in the product is moving, now it's air that takes care of it. And so it's a cheap process to do. Then you can take your dried comfrey and your green alfalfa and make a cube or pellet out of it. Just like that.
Hold that thought. We're going into a break. Dr. Richard Allen Miller is with us. You know, Rick, as you're talking about comfrey, I've got to tell you, I have not seen a single farmer engage in the practice of growing comfrey to feed, large animals like cows and horses. They're just not doing it. And I think it is just, well, heck, why do that? Why go through all that work when all you have to do is just plant some Kentucky 31 and you get these bottle of injections and you buy the syringes and you just stick the cows, and give them these
far
chemicals.
Better. It's so far better. What happened in Honda and their 2 feedlots in Osaka, the cattle now have absolutely no diseases. None. No antibiotics are needed, and the protein yields are even higher than with normal feedlots. So the advantages of working from natural sources, working with balanced foods with amino acids, that's the bottom line. And that's where we're going to go ultimately.
Yeah, I agree. And, as we're discussing this, I'm thinking, what makes our cows different from everybody else's? Well, our cows eat lots of different grasses. They are out in the sunshine. Are you certified
organic? Can you sell your beef as organic now because you're certified?
We are not certified because of the government red tape. However, if we went through the certification process, we would be, because we don't use...
That means the certification process, by the way, is state by state. Each state is different. The organizations have different requirements. None of it is meaningful per se, but your cost is your price that you can sell your beef at changes significantly.
Well, we were thinking about doing it sort of the same way, but a little bit differently. We can say we are natural. We do not use the chemical fertilizers. And here's what we do that maybe is a little different. We cut hay and bale hay from other people's farms because they can't do it themselves. And we cut and bale hay that has not had chemicals applied to the grass. Yeah, that's exactly what we do. And it's because there are a lot of older farmers here that just, they want to keep their farm, but they just can't. They can't get on the tractor.
They have the fields, but they don't have the machines. Yeah,
that's exactly right. So we have the ability, the health right now to do it. We have the machinery to do it, and so our logic, and I'd love to hear your opinion on this. Our logic is, instead of buying chemical fertilizers, what we can do is we can use rotational grazing, which means that we'll put the cows on a strip. We'll use electric fence tape, and we'll move the cows every day or 2 at the most.
That's the correct way to do it, by the way. That's the way we do it out here in the West. Yeah,
so
the fields, the cattle need other things. That's what Alltech and your animal feed suppliers are all about. That's where you get your injections and your needles and things like that, through people like Alltech. But we showed them how to do the comfrey. They couldn't get enough of it to sell. And the problem is, when I was moved out of that facility and stopped producing it, there was nobody doing it again. And if there's people out there that would love to do that, I'll teach you how to do it if you'll help me publish my other works. I need patrons, and return on their money. I've got 30 manuscripts of individual projects I've done ready to go to press, and I have no way to do it because just getting layout is going to get the thing in book position. I don't do that. What I do is write. And so I'm good to go with more books if there's people out there. And when I say the comfrey, I've got 360 different books on different products, including the Tagetes variety of Zanzafil marigolds, so that you can do chickens and feedlots and other kinds of animal control where you can work from natural resources using alternative crops. And let me tell you, that was the way it used to do. And if you don't think we're not going to need that now, when I started talking about the trees and the kill everywhere, our forests are dying, we're going to need this technology soon.
Yeah, it's clear to me. Let's talk more about your patrons that you're looking for when we come back. Everyone all set, cocked, locked, hour number 2 of Sonny Skidmore's favorite radio broadcast. Sonny Skidmore is the owner of KLID AM 1340 in Poplar Bluff, Missouri. And they take this broadcast and air it every day, Monday through Friday. And thank you so much for doing that, KLID, and all of those at AM 1340 Poplar Bluff in Missouri. You know, Rick, we're talking about patrons, and you mentioned that you're looking for some patrons. What necessary?
What I'll do is, if someone helps me with a book, I will put their name in the book with special thanks. I will pay them the amount that they loaned me to do that book of first sales plus 10%. And I have 30 books to go.
All right, and what will it take to do?
Usually about $5,000 to take a book from my with the way I've done it to the point where people can read it. You know, artwork, layout, proofing, cover, and then there's a small print. You know, like I usually will get 200 of them, and then for sales, repeat. You know, I'll do that. And every single book I have ever written has gone bestseller. That means 50,000 copies. Unfortunately, none of mine have done that in 1 year. I have one book, The Magical and Ritual Use of Herbs, the first book I wrote, has sold, as of 2 years ago, 297,000 copies. Every book I write sells very well. Some have more limited markets, like agriculture. People aren't as interested, you know, demographically in agriculture. But everything I've written, like The Potential of Herbs, that's a classic. And right now, look at how many people are selling it on Amazon. I can't believe it. New. And one is even a mass market, which is not me. I have no idea what that means. It means that my books are good enough that they're worthy of other people copying them, printing them, and making money off me. I need policemen. I don't know how frequent that is to other people, but you can go on the internet and just do any of my titles and then go PDF free and see what happens next. No wonder they call us starving artists. It's a compliment in that sense of it, but every time I do radio, I don't have the response that I used to because it's being shared with other people. So I'm essentially working for other people.
Yeah,
that's a shame.
Well, that's a very polite way of saying that your work is being stolen.
Yeah, that's a compliment, though. You know, I used to think plagiarism was the finest compliment somebody could give you, that they wanted to call it their own. But nobody writes like me, and so my writings stand out. There is no question who wrote it because nobody else could, and that's that. And so, with that said, I will be remembered even if I go to the grave in a shallow grave, you know, with a... I'm kidding. I'm depressed because the harder I work, the less I have.
Yeah, wow. That's, you know, we have one of our instructors who says he's really blessed, and the harder he works, the more he's blessed. But what you're saying is because of the theft.
My blessings are my knowledge base. And from that point of view, Thank you, Lord. I am blessed to be who I am, even though it isn't necessarily the most secure, comfortable way of being. There's a lot of drama. There's a lot of, what am I going to do, kind of thing. But that is also what has made my life as rich as it has been and as depth of experience that I've had. When I left the military, I don't know if people know that. When I left and announced that I was leaving the military, Henry Barth himself flew all the way over from Nuremberg. He was the 5th richest man in the world. I hired me on the spot, and then for the next 7 years, I did agriculture under his flag with deep pockets to learn how to grow things. And mostly what happened next, I built a processing plant with students off of a USDA grant at Rogue Community College, and that is history now as the largest processing plant in Oregon, doing the entire peppermint revenues for the state of Oregon. It's over in Culver now, owned by a German, of course. They bought it from Barry Meltzer of San Francisco Herb. When I left the business, the plant was sold to Barry. Barry then eventually sold it to this guy in Germany, Mugenberg Drogenhose. Now, that's just something I put on a $50,000 grant that was now the largest processing plant in the state of Oregon, and it was run by a bunch of students at Rogue Community College, the Southern Oregon Herb Gatherers Association. It was very cool.
Rick, as we're talking about this, I'm thinking about farmers, and I'm thinking about how difficult it is to farm. It's expensive for machinery. The machinery is always breaking down. The prices of seed are going up and down. The price of fuel is volatile. I mean, the markets are volatile. The weather's unpredictable by us.
Well, now the weather is absolutely unpredictable. Mm-hmm. Something's happening, and things are changing, and it's no longer the kind of earth that I used to. I mean, you used to be able to just smell the storm that was going to come in.
Right.
You can't do that anymore.
Well, and if you didn't want to smell the storm that was coming in, you could look at the Farmer's Almanac that was printed over a year before.
Which is, yeah. Listen, man, I can tell you, the farmer is a risky business because if you cut your field wrong and then it rains, you can lose your crop. The shatter from the rain hitting your dried alfalfa leaf will ruin your crop. And you have to be, I don't know, you have a witch's brew where you can predict what it's going to do. I used to be real good at that, but today I wouldn't dream of trying to do that because of the way the weather is changing. You can't tell. It rained yesterday here in Grants Pass. It has never rained at this time of year. Mm-hmm. And so...
We were looking for rain for the last several days, and it's the weather report's going to rain. It's going to rain, and we're thinking this is great. This will really help the grass grow. It hasn't shown up, and
I know that it's something is happening to the Earth itself. There's been a pole shift. There has been a magnetic pole shift, and when I say a pole shift, I meant a literal one. Australia now is our Mediterranean, our equator. It has moved. The Earth has shifted. Why? I don't know. The Earth is now, they're discovering there's other magnetic fields on the Earth besides the North and South Pole, and those fields are moving toward the Indian Ocean. Both the North and South Pole are moving in the same direction to each other because the Earth is no longer round. It wobbles. And that's part of why the weather is changing. There's some other factors, and now I just posted the Aborigines of Africa, of Australia. They're the oldest known tribes in the world, way more than the Inuit of 7,000 years. And the Aborigines are saying the end of days are upon us, and they're saying it's 2020 is when it's all going to happen, and they have never, historically, ever been wrong. That's posted on my
the
Facebook.
Hopi,
They're 5,000 years. They came from the Clovis culture out of Mexico. And that culture, by the way, had spaceflight. That has been demonstrated. Their facility down in Popo is larger than New York City and more advanced, and that culture crawled out of a cave to become the Hopi.
Okay.
And the Inuit have 7,000 years, and now the Aborigines of Australia. And there's a big conference that's happening over in Australia, in Brisbane, that will be talking about that. I posted it on Facebook. It's very important because they are now talking about the end of days. And they have never, even during the Ice Age, which they have in their legends, talked about the end of days.
Mm-hmm. Well, from what I understand, the Hopi are saying that we are now in the beginning of the middle of the end. Is that what you're thinking as well?
We're talking about epochs where there are changes in the earth itself and changes in terms of the animals, like being frozen on site because of the day after tomorrow effect and things of that nature. Yes, we're going to go through something serious shortly. And there will be survivors. Man has always survived. But I have no idea what is about to happen. There's threats of pandemic. There's threats of, with the New Madrid fault line? If we had a day after tomorrow, and basically the East Coast is essentially going through that right now. You know, I have a friend in New Jersey that said, if you're buying a snowplow, make sure it has a cab, because the weather has changed to the point where you need that kind of driving ability. And, I'm going to tell you, I can't call the weather anymore. Nobody can, because it's different, and it's unpredictably different. And that was a post I did on Facebook yesterday. It's, I don't know what it all means yet, but I'm here to witness it, and all these things about change are not to be feared. They are basically opportunities for change.
Hold that thought. We'll be right back. You know, Rick, you mentioned your friend in New Jersey who said if you're going to buy a snowplow, make sure you get one with a cab. And I recognized exactly what he was saying several years ago. About maybe 18, 19 years ago, I decided to buy our first cab tractor for baling hay. Now, did I need a cab tractor? Farmers hardly use cab tractors for baling hay, but the sun was becoming hotter and hotter and hotter, and it was really, really uncomfortable baling hay without the protection of a cab. And so a cab tractor is the same tractor, except it has glass and all around it. So you've got a rear window, side windows, a lot of glass. And because it has glass, you have air conditioning, because in the summer you really need air conditioning because it gets even hotter than if you had an open tractor. And in the winter you have heat. So we bought our first cab tractor, 1985 John Deere Model 2950. And then several years ago, I decided that we needed another tractor because we used to be able to cut the hay with an open tractor and bale it with a cab tractor. And the reason for that is the cab tractor moves slowly. You don't have the wind cooling you off on those really, really hot days when you're baling hay. So cutting it was okay because you're moving pretty quickly, a few miles an hour, and going way slower than that while you're baling. Well, that's no longer the case. The case now is we need a cab tractor to cut the hay and bale the hay. So we have another cab tractor, another 1985 model tractor. Happens to be a Deutz 1140S, also known as a DX 4.70. So they're both German tractors, the John Deere and the Deutz. They're great. They're really old. But yes, you're absolutely right. So cabs are now being required. Now we have some, open tractors, and, in the 40 horsepower range that we use for, miscellaneous small jobs like raking fields with, we have a 13-foot or so rake that will, rake the hay into windrows. And we use an International 385, which is a 40 horsepower tractor. But I had to get a sunshade for that because the sun just beating down on you is too much. And then we have another little tractor, another 40 horsepower four-wheel drive tractor, and I had to buy a sunshade for that. So I have to fabricate a way of attaching the sunshade to the rollover protection bar. So the bottom line is, your friend is absolutely right. It's getting harder and harder because farmers used to be able to operate their equipment, their tractors, with just a hat. Not anymore. It's darn near impossible to operate your equipment by being in the sun for hour after hour after hour. So that's my comment, Rick.
I've just posted something that's interesting. As we know, the gut is very important as it regards to the future and our timelines and the way we talk to ourselves with synchronicity and so on. And I just posted a study that's being done at Stanford on seaweed diet reveals the potential for precision manipulation of gut bacteria. And you have no idea how important that is in terms of having that kind of precision means that you have that kind of control with a time machine, if you want to look at it that way. And I think that will be under Sustainable Lifeboats on Facebook. I have several places I'm posting now on Facebook, trying to leave my information and what I think is important, and this one is on seaweed. Why is seaweed so important? Well, one thing is they're all about the same, except they all contain all 72 minerals. Magnesium is a very important one that is missing in most people's diets. And magnesium is one that will actuate the other minerals in doing what they're supposed to do. And so seaweed is critical. And we used to put seaweed on our soil so that we had the minerals in the soil that were not present because of deficiencies of wash or whatever. Seaweed, like the brown Neurocystis bullwhip algae, is an annual that comes in on the tides in Bandon, and at one point could have become an industry there with the kids in high school collecting the annual every day.
Hold that thought. Dr. Richard Allen Miller is with us. Class, if you'd like to go to his website, richardallenmiller.com. Richard, A-L-A-N, Miller.com. Also, you can go to docram.com, docram.com. Rick, if we have some members of our class who are interested in helping you as patrons for your publications, would you like them to contact you through your email?
They're most welcome to call and chat, and I'll, and they can pick which projects, because some people are interested in agriculture, and others are interested in physics, and others are interested in woo-woo. Is that the right word, woo-woo? It's interesting. My history and background, I'm starting to realize just how blessed I was. To be at the University of Washington, just out of graduate school, and working in anesthesiology, and who is my lead but Jerry Pollack? How does that work? How does it work that I work with Henry Barth? When I met Henry Barth, he was in an antitrust suit with Augie Bush. He grows all the hops in the world. He is, Augie Bush, Anheuser-Busch was out of Montana, and they were at war with each other. And I started, when he came in, he gave me 28 farms in 4 states with an aircraft, where I got to work with 28 farm managers and deep pockets to learn how to grow crops. What do you think I learned with my mind and the way I am? I do not know of anybody in agriculture like me. If you want to put a field crop in, I'm your huckleberry, or at least according to Conrad Richter. And right now, I've got a whole bunch of workshops now starting up in BC, Canada, on metaphysics and herb farming. I can't believe it. It's interesting. The same people want to do both workshops.
What I find interesting, Rick, what I find interesting is I thought up until a couple of days ago that the powers that are running the show really needed farmers, and farmers are getting older, farmers are dying, and new farmers are not taking their place, one for one. And I thought, wow, this is a real problem. Thing. And then, it's a scary thing for the villagers, but I don't think that the guys who are running the show care about it, because they'll be able to buy whatever they want, even during a world crisis or a world famine. And I was talking to my son about this, who is a full-time farmer. That he is a degreed farmer, and he and I are looking at different ways of doing things better for the animals and for our customers. And he said, "Hey, Dad, during plagues, during crises, the kings still feasted. They were okay. They did just fine."
I had a nice talk with Joey. He called me the other day, and we were talking about the New Madrid fault line and the possibilities of a day after tomorrow and what happens to the nuclear power plant when it freezes. And
what did you determine?
You have that whole region there's a high likelihood it will be uninhabitable at some point in history because of the nuclear power plants and what's happening right now with the weather. You have your warning signs. You know it's going to happen because it can't not happen in the reboot of ocean currents. It has historically happened, and there it is right in front of you with all the earmarkings of danger, Will Robbins, danger. And yet, nobody is talking about it.
Well, we are, but there are 104 nuclear power plants in the United States, and almost everybody is downwind from some of them, right? Because the weather patterns, they used to be.
The one in Indian Point is still leaking. The one down in Florida is still leaking. And all 21 plants that are on the New Madrid fault line, they're old Daiichi-like design. They're all right now, this moment, leaking, just like Hanford.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I'm trying to ring the bell, and I've been on stage twice trying to get the membership to listen to my logic. I'm talking about the electric cooperative. I cannot get elected to the board because the membership is so dumb. They are willing to re-elect
with intent. Our children, I would not want to be a millennium. Yeah. I mean, right now, what do you think's going to happen? They're intelligent, but they're not practical. We have talked about this previously, and nobody has a clue on the lineage of passing down farm techniques from one generation to the next.
Well, okay, so let's talk about that for a second. Gwyneth Isaacs was on with me this week, and she said something absolutely fascinating to me and to our class. She said, and I'm paraphrasing, she said that we passed down some capabilities and we passed down traits from genetically through the bloodlines. And she said, you can have a kleptomaniac in your lineage, and kleptomania can be passed down. And I'm thinking, okay, I've heard the expression when I lived in Virginia, an apple doesn't fall far from its tree. So if you've got someone who has a serious negative trait like not being able to find the energy to work for a living and just want to be a parasite, it seems to run in the family. So it gets passed down to the son and so forth. And I was thinking about that. And I was not of farm lineage that I know of. Oh, actually, I'm sure that generations, many generations back, in Italy, my family was involved in farming. But when they came to America, no, not really. My grandfather was very interested in farming, but he didn't have a farm. He lived on a small spot of land in a city, but he had a great garden in his backyard. Well, I didn't grow up in a family that had a farm, but yet I'm very interested in farming. And our son is very interested in farming. But to just start out and say, you know what, I'm going to put away my computer keyboard. I'm not going to do that anymore. I'm going to quit my job at the insurance company where I just talk to people for a living, or I'm going to quit my job at the hospital where all I do is make appointments, or I'm going to quit my job at the conveyor belt where I ring up items that people are purchasing. I'm just going to become a farmer. It's not all that easy. It takes a passion to do that. And unfortunately, our millennials are at such a disadvantage. It's almost insurmountable for them to gain the knowledge.
Most people don't realize that a farmer is actually a polymath and doing a number of different fields, including welding, animal husbandry, field crop production, seed. To be a farmer requires you to be an expert in a number of fields, not one.
All right, let me give you an example. Right now, while I'm on the air, I'm looking out the window. Mrs. Finelli and our son have a tractor with a front end loader on the tractor, and they've engineered a way of getting something I just bought for the farm off the pickup truck that we picked up yesterday. And what I bought was a wheel balancer. So, and I'm talking about the kind that you balance car and truck wheels with. So when you buy new tires, they mount the tires onto the wheels, and then they bring them over to a balancer and balance them. Well, I'm sick and tired of trying to find people to balance our tires, and they keep charging more and more and more and more. And I said, okay, what's the break-even point? And I found one made by Snap-on, and it was a commercial one that was in a Walmart. So it's absolutely top of the line, best you can get. But I bought it for $400. But it needs a couple things. One of the things that it needs is I need to convert the motor from 3-phase to split-phase. I've never done that before, but I'm going to do it, and I'm beginning to research on how to do that. So by the time I'm done, I'm going to have maybe $600 in this $5,000 wheel balancer, and it'll be great. And you're right, polymath, that's what we do. We figure things out. I have to figure out how I'm going to mount it, where I'm going to mount it, how I'm going to run power to it. Have I ever done it before? No. But I know that I'm going to be better off with a wheel balancer than without. And before I bought the wheel balancer, I bought a tire machine, a used one. And why? Because we have flats like crazy here on the farm. Thorns go through our tires. We need to patch them, pull the tubes out. And so I bought a tire machine. We use it a lot. And why? Well, because it costs $15 to change a tire. So now we have a used tire machine. It hooks up to the air compressor, and we're good to go. Next thing I know what's going to happen, our neighbors are going to come over here and say, hey, can we pay you to fix our flats because the tire guy's closed? Hey, we're stuck in the field. Can you come with your front end loader, lift up the front of our tractor, take the front tire off, bring it over to your tire machine, and patch it for us? Can you do that? And if we have time, we will. So we're doing all kinds of things, and polymath is absolutely right. That's what we do. So for people who are interested in everything, farming is a pretty cool way to do everything. Yeah. The hard way. and you talked about comfrey. We decided that we're going to try to grow better feeds to supplement our cows naturally. And that's why we got a square baler. That's why that's happening, exactly for those reasons. But the bottom line, Rick, I think the guys who are running the show don't care about us. They don't care about the farmers. And they think, well, we can always buy whatever it is we need. And the kings will always be able to feast during crises and famines. because they'll be able to afford it. We'll be right back. Rick, we've been connecting the dots for years. We've been talking about the trees dying. We've been talking about how difficult it is to be a farmer because of the unpredictable nature of everything that farmers engage in. Bees are another problem. And, you know, I read a study this morning that said that there's of course, the bee population is collapsing. There's no question about that. And people are saying, well, it's because of fungicides and pesticides, and the bees just are having a really tough time. So now there's this new focus on, hey, let's plant flowering plants to help the bees survive. So let's bring back the bees by planting flowers. What a great idea! The bees.
They're going to use these little what do they call it? The flying machines. They're drones. That's what they're using for bees now. They've actually got a drone the size of a bee that is used to pollinate plants, and it works. And then a bunch of criminals got a hold of those and used them to dispatch the police when they're doing a robbery, confusing everybody. Watch what happens to our new world and how it's going to change, man.
I'm very concerned about self-driving autonomous automobiles.
We're in deep... Yeah, doggy doo-doo. I caught myself. There it is, man. Merd to merd. There you are. That's Chief. Worse, and I don't have answers. But what I do have, Joey said, well, where are you going to move? And my response, yeah, that's a good one. Stay tuned.
All right, so you talked about the New Madrid fault line, which we live near. You've got the San Andreas fault. You've got droughts. You've got pollution coming across the Pacific from China. You've got
the Four Horsemen. There they are.
Mm-hmm. So, and that's a really good question, because Joey, who is a USA Preparedness instructor, and I and you and Miles, you know, we've all talked about, all right, so where is it good to go? The answer is...
pick your disaster.
Right. Pick your disaster.
That'll tell you.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And the earthquake generation was the one that settled me into Oregon. That doesn't mean I'm right. I have natural caverns that are 4.5 hours on motorcycle. Mm-hmm. Do you realize the extent of the cavern systems on the West Coast here? Not even talking about Goonies.
So, what happens if there's
if we have a day after tomorrow, everything 10 feet down is going to be dead, including your seed and your mycorrhiza and the soil organisms. Everything's going to be dead. Mm-hmm. FYI. That's why they're doing seed vaults like they are. And Canada, their repositories are not about gold. They're seed.
And what I understand about the seed vault is the entrance to it is melting. And so now there's concern, is that going to work?
Yeah, here we go.
And we're now talking about
the rubber tree.
And we're now talking about, okay, so what do we do for water in Africa that is running out of water? Well, we'll just tow some icebergs over there.
Yeah, how about that potable part?
Yeah. So the climate's changing. We are under threat, and we still continue to pollute more and more and more. We're using plastic like it's free, and it becomes a waste product. We're using fuel, we'll call it.
That's the way the Kingston Trio sang it. And here we are in the Tijuana jail. Ain't got no money to pay our bail. I think it's time that everybody begin to think about waking up and becoming illuminated.
Yeah, I totally agree. And that's what we're trying to do. We're trying
Wakey. That was Crocodile Dundee. Wakey.
Rick, thanks so much for being with us and sharing your knowledge and expertise and experiences. Really appreciate it. Class, above all, honesty and integrity. What happens next is up to you.